I guess what we found when, in particular, we looked at our Simsbury initiating systems plant, and that's in a plant just in Connecticut, was that they had a very different way of working. And that was really grassroots productivity improvement, led by the people we call producers. And that was quite intriguing because I had been involved in my career in a lot of productivity programs. However, they were productivity programs that were very much top-down driven. And of course, what you know about program-based productivity programs is they have a beginning and they have an end. What we found in Simsbury was an ongoing productivity program. And I guess the difference was that it was led by the producers rather than the leadership.
When you say producers, you mean workers?
Yeah, we call them in Australia your shop floor employees. And these are people who come to work every day and their mindset is very consistent with our vision, which is all around challenging and improving the status quo. So they actively look at the process, and their job is actually not only to produce detonators, but to actually say, how can I improve the process to become more efficient?
How did that culture develop? That's very different in the US from what it is here.
Given that the US is such a competitive market, I think firms across there have always focused on productivity. And we found that in the US. And in fact, what we said is we've got this fantastic, almost school that we had in the business, a productivity school, if you like. And the question was, how can we take some of those principles and bring them to the whole of the Incitec Pivot group?
James, how do you measure productivity at plants or in a sales office?
I was in the US a couple of months ago where I started to see some of this work actually being implemented at a place called Cheyenne in Wyoming. And there we run 4 nitric acid plants, and I visited the 4th nitric acid plant. And what I found was we can only produce 560 tonnes of nitric acid per day. Anything over that exceeds our EPA licence. What we found in that plant was that there wasn't a standard way of running the plant. The plant was run quite differently between each shift. So what we did is we sat down and said, what's the goal? The goal is to produce 559.9 tonnes per day, just under 560. Now, what is it that we need to do in terms of standard work in order to produce those tonnes? We documented the processes and then measured them. Simply actually wrote down the process measures on a whiteboard. And what we've been able to find, in order to do that, we've increased the output of that plant by 3%, which is worth $1 million onto the bottom line. So you can see the key elements are define the standard work, measure the standard work, and where you've got variance, that's where you direct your productivity improvement, and that'll drive the output.
How did the Australian workers handle that?
Well, actually, they've really embraced it. We, before this, also ran a whole heap of climate surveys in the company, and what we actually found uniformly across the globe was that our workforce wanted to improve every day. No one wants to go to work and do the same thing day in, day out. And what we've found is our workforce in Australia has really latched onto this. When they're at work, what they want to do is they want to achieve something. And if you can measure what it is they're doing in their work, then you get that achievement focus going back. I think we underestimate actually our shop floor and actually what motivates them. And I think as leaders, it's probably the same thing that motivates us.
Where does this ongoing productivity end?
Fundamentally, this is about culture change. We're a company that drives productivity, and it's having that mindset. And that's the reason why you'll get a sustainable competitive advantage out of it, because you can't copy another company's culture.
My feeling in Australia is that we have a business system much more oriented towards the traditional British system, top down.
And that is a very different way of working. And I think, I'm convinced is that if you don't move to this new way of working, you simply won't exist.
Do you feel that Australian firms who don't adapt to this will go out of business?
Well, a lot of companies will need to adapt to this new way of working. And you're absolutely right, it turns the whole organisation on its head. It says, as a mindset, the most important people we've got in the business are the people who create value for the customer. We call it the value-added layer, but it's our people on the shop floor, it's our blasters on a mine bench, and they're the people who determine what the work is. Leadership role is down here supporting all of that.